So you braid until you run out of body strands or run out of core. On this whip, my body strands came up short first, and there's just a little bit of core left. I'm going to take some masking tape of any color and just wrap it in a figure 8 like this around the ends of my strands in the core. That makes things nice and tidy for a stopping point if I want to set this aside, but otherwise the next step is going to be to roll it under a board, and that'll keep it from unbraiding while we do that. I'm also going to find the tip of my core where the tape was poking out and just trim that off. It'll either disappear when I stretch it, or I can try to press it in with a fid, and otherwise just moving on to rolling the core, it will most likely slip into the body and disappear entirely. Alright, on the floor, I'm going to set the whip. I have a piece of Korean countertop scrap. This is my board that I like to roll the whip with. I also have some holes drilled in the board. Each one of those holes has the edges beveled with a file. So I'll roll the whip, running the whole length of it, and this helps round everything out. When I'm done with that, I'll pass the skinny end of the whip through the largest hole and begin pulling it through. You can do this with a piece of wood. You could drill holes in a board. Very simple. So between rolling and pulling it, it's going to round everything down nice and compress it and make everything look even better than when it was first braided. And I'll just speed up the process here. After I've pulled it through all the holes from largest to smallest, I'll just roll the body of it one last time. I undid the tape that was holding my strings in place, and now I'm taking a look at the core here. It's time to trim the core off. Whether your core was braided or twisted, it's probably wrapped with tape. So here I am trying to decide the length I want. With just a couple inches of strands left, I'm going to trim it off, and then we will crown things. Alright, there's your 8 strands. 2, 2, 2, and 2. We're going to crown this to finish it. You can look all over YouTube for videos on how to crown something, but 2 at a time. We put them over, and then this one goes over those 2. It's going to make kind of like a windmill. These 2 go over this one. The final 2 go over this one. And of course, since that's the last set of 2, they have to tuck in right here. And of course, I'm going to fumble with it. Sorry about that. Once they're crowned, I can pull them tight, and you can kind of see how they come together. So you can arrange your 2 so that they cross or are side by side. Doesn't really matter, but while it's still a little bit loose, this is when you'd work on the positions of everything and then pull it tight. Just going to loosen it to cross these so that I'm happier with how it looks. Okay. Pull it nice and tight. Once it's tight, we're going to bury these strands on the side of the whip. All we need to do is tuck under 2 of these strands. So to make a space, you can use either an antler fid or a screwdriver like this. That'll accomplish the same thing. And then just pass it under. There's one. I'm going to do that with all 8 of these around the body of the whip. Here are all the buried ends, and then I trimmed each one of these with a taper so that they'll kind of lay nicely. The first handle we're going to show you is just a piece of leather that's going to be sewn on. So of course you size it and check the fit. I want this to pull nice and snug when I sew it up. And I'm going to bury the thread into the handle before I start, because that'll keep it from sliding down. Here's a time lapse of me sewing the handle on. I pull the needles through with pliers. I leave it loose until all the holes have been gone through, and then I can go back and tighten things up. I like to tighten all the stitches up a total of 2 times. Alright, so we have the simple leather handle finished. Another way to do your handles is to braid a leather or rawhide knot over it. You could do a series of knots that were all different. This would just help stiffen the handle area. I recommend Enrique Capone's books because all the instructions are actual photos of knots and a very good detailed step-by-step process on how to braid them. His books are available for purchase online. They're roughly $40 each. They are excellent, and it's at leather-braiding.com. So for the truly Hawaiian style whip, the stock whip, you need a tapered handle with a bit of a cap or a ball-shaped top, something that causes this to stop right there. And your whip body is the same. The only difference is the body and core get a little bit narrower near the end of the braiding. So this piece is represented by this bit of scrap leather. You basically cut this 4 strands that need to be quite a bit longer than on my scrap, but for demonstration purposes, what we do is once it's cut, you pass your 4 strands through here. Now you have the loop that can be put onto the handle, and you braid your 4 strands down anywhere from 2 to 4 inches in length. And then to fasten everything together, we've got 2 knots. Basically the 4 strands go this way and the 8 strands go this way, and you crown them all around each other. So the body is fastened to this 4 strand piece, and they connect and crown. All right, it's time to make the popper. The easiest way to make a popper would be from baling twine, and you can follow these instructions with baling twine. It'll turn out great. But the most durable whip popper comes from braided hand line. Not everyone has thought of this, so it seemed fair to build one for you out of braided hand line. I'm just gonna take 3 of these, and if you were using baling twine, it would be a similar amount, just a couple millimeters thick worth of strands, and I guess you'd want them to be 7 to 10 inches long. All right, so we're gonna twist this. You can spin it between your thumb and forefinger. Doesn't matter which direction you twist it. You can also put one end in your teeth and then use both hands to spin it. Why not? Let's try that. We're going to twist this up so tight that it starts to kink, so that as your fingers come together, it wants to loop up on itself like that. And in approximately the middle, we're going to let it kink up. All right, I had to get out of my own way so that you could see what I'm going to do. So I taped the eyelet down and I taped one side down. We're going to make a C shape, and it has to be upward. This is called a blood knot by the whip making books that I've learned from. So we have our C shape, and we wrap it around the body, not 1, but 2 times. And again, I'm using pliers partly just to keep my fingers out of the way so that you can see. So I wrapped it around the body 2 times. The C shape was flipped upwards. It's in the middle of the C where I do the wrap. And then when I pull down, we have our knot. And now, because this is braided hand line, the best way for it to pop really well is if I unbraid the tips of these 4 pieces here. I tried to make a popper from 3 strands and it ended up being too wide, so between takes I reduced it to 2, and that means I have fewer of these little strands to unbraid. This is what makes noise when you crack the whip. It's just the popper. The ends below this knot are what experience the most wear and tear, and that's where the logic comes in to use braided hand line, is it's just really durable. Baling twine is still the classic popper. They're easy to make. The material is cheap and readily available if you're around farms or horses or any of that. But the ends of the baling twine break off with every single whip crack. And so you'll just be replacing those poppers a lot more frequently. Time to attach the popper to the fall. If it's not this narrow at the bottom, then you're going to want to carefully trim it down until it is. So the first step is to take it and form it into a fish. The popper goes through and then hooks over the tail of the fish. And then we will pull it down to tighten everything. There, that took longer than it needed to. So I'm gonna let just a little bit stick out there. Gradually as we pull it tight, you'll see that my popper hook's on. There's just a little bit extra there. And as I pull it tighter and tighter, it will either stay like the fish shape, or it will bite down. Oh, this also is a fish shape. Sometimes your leather will straighten and the popper will just be bit down into the leather. But it's kind of ideal if it stays fish shaped when it's pulled tight. So here's the difference between a baling twine popper and a handline popper. And they can really vary in overall length. This one is on the shorter side, and if I don't like it, I'll just build a new one and make it longer. All right, last step would be to add some leather conditioner to your new project. I make my own, and as you can see on the tag here, it's beeswax, tallow, essential oils, and when I wrote saddle oil here at the top, that just means it has a little bit of neat's foot oil in it. You can get some commercial leather conditioner, it doesn't matter. But our leather is on the dry side, and we can really protect our whip from the wear and tear it's going to go through by giving it a good coating of this stuff. It's also going to add a tiny bit of weight to the whip and beef up the body a little bit. So I'm going to put quite a bit on and then give it a little bit of time to soak in and wipe off the rest with a cloth or paper towel or something. Now that you understand how these whips are made and you understand the proportions, you could make miniature versions. This is a Hawaiian whip worn as a hatband, and even though it's tiny, it's fully functional.